All right, here comes Melanie Davis.
Will we be able to talk to Melanie and all these people that are coming in?
I'm pretty sure you can talk to everybody right now.
Really? Hi, Melanie. There's Laura.
Melanie is muted. Now she's
unmuted.
Unmuted.
She's unmuted. You're the best.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, Melanie.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Oh, it's good to be here. We've watched you since the early days.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool. Who else we got here? We got Phil and Sarah.
How's it going?
Oh, hey, Phil. Looking for, look at your shirt, Phil. Hey, set up a little bit, Phil. Just bring it up a little bit. Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Oh, my gosh. I'm inspired. I am absolutely inspired right now.
What? Now, hold on. Mark, I know you're inspired right now. Lauren, can you stand up and show what shirt you're wearing?
It's one of the originals.
Look at that. I mean.
Oh, my goodness. Hey, that was cool.
That was in that Denver game on TV the other night.
That was really cool.
Gosh, I don't know what you're talking about. I was watching News4Jax.
I didn't mention any names.
There was a game on the other night?
We got
you.
And
you didn't need to watch it. You lived it.
I'm not sure. Is that Laura that I'm seeing there?
Eons ago.
Oh, yeah. Well.
And Craig Shupaloop.
Cole, how are you, man?
Good. Craig and I go way back, Mark. Once upon a time, we were game day workers at JU basketball. I was doing the PA.
We got
He was doing everything else. Marcia's here.
Season 16, Cole.
You're back.
Shoot,
You're still doing that.
Hi there.
Oh, do you? Wait.
All right, we're going to hope that all of our technology here decides it's going to operate. Everything's going to be good. Mark's not going to freeze like he is right now. That sort of thing as we do this. But we do have some more insiders who are going to be joining us, so we're looking forward to that here in the next couple of minutes. And we've got a lot to talk about for sure. I see him in the upper left-hand corner of my screen right here. I'm not sure if that's the case for everybody, but that's our producer, Josh Beecham, who is going to be sort of driving the bus here for us on a lot of these things. People's, as we come in and out, will be moving around, and we may need to get Mark reloaded here.
I'm going to drive the bus into the studio to help Mark. So, Cole,
Please do.
if you'd be so kind as to just chat everyone up, and we'll get going here shortly.
I can do it. This is like rain delay stuff from baseball, doing baseball games for years. One of the things that, just to let everybody know how we're doing this as far as our setup, here at News4Jax, we have two different studios. We have Studio A and Studio B, very cleverly named. And I'm in Studio A, which for those of you who watch the news, you would be used to seeing this quite a bit with what we do in the evenings. Mark is in Studio B, where for the most part, the morning show is shot, and we also have, we'll utilize that throughout the course of the day as well. During the pandemic, we've been using both studios an awful lot. We'll have one anchor, let's say in the evening, Tom or Kent will be sitting here where I'm sitting, and then we'll have another anchor, Mary or Joy, what have you, will be in Studio B to keep that social distancing. We're all doing what we can. Got our News4Jax masks. The closest person to me right now is John Gahn, who you can hear in the distance. John is working away, trying to get everything in line for the 10 o'clock news. With John, are we getting rained on between now and? No, sir. We're dry. Everybody's good. If you're outside, if you're going to be outside during the show, we're in good shape. But we do have an awful lot to talk about. And one of the things that we'll do is we'll have an opportunity for those of you who want to ask a question or make a comment. You can jump in on that as well. I want everybody to know that there's a bigger audience that is out watching this now on news4jax.com. But you guys are the insiders that have the exclusive spot here for be able to interact. So we're happy that you decided to do that, and happy to see everybody's faces here. We did not know that what happened the last couple of days was going to be happening leading up to our first virtual show, but we have plenty to talk about for sure. We also want to let everybody know that next week on Tuesday night, we'll do another of these virtual shows. So insiders will have a chance again to be a part of it. And then looking ahead, the following Tuesday will be the first of our live broadcast shows. We'll be doing that from in studio on that Tuesday, because with the NFL, when they do the 2 Monday night games to open up the season, it creates a different restrictive window for highlights and so forth. So we'll do that on Tuesday. After that, which would be, that's Tuesday the 15th. So the following 21st, September 21st, is that why I have that date right? We'll be back on the air on CW 17, and that'll be a 7 o'clock start. The 21st. I'm looking at the calendar here. So that's what we have lined up for you here in the short term. And as soon as we get Mark lined back up again, we have to reboot the ColecoVision and get him going. So we'll get Mark involved again. Just by show of hands, for those of you who are here right now, how many people are working from home or school from home, whatever, socially? How many people for their job routinely are socially distant? Yeah. And how many of you have used Zoom or, something similar to that a lot, right? Can you imagine going through this pandemic without the kind of technology we have right now? I mean, it's been tough enough for a lot of us. I have carved out a little room at my house. It's sort of it's a glorified closet, really. It's technically a bedroom, but it doesn't have a window. So it's sort of like an interior room. And that's where I do most of my work during the day. Then I come into the studio at night and do what I do on the air. And it's amazing you guys have probably experienced this as well, for those of you who have other coworkers who are working remotely, to be able to keep communication up, whether it's Microsoft Teams or Zoom or a combination of those things. And but man, I could tell you, getting out to practice at training camp has been so nice to be able to do that. The few times I've been able to do that this year, because it feels a little bit like normal. And thank goodness for football season, we're starting to get a little bit of something that feels like a little bit of normal here coming up, even though it will not look the same at all. We'll talk about that as well coming up. I'm told just a couple of more minutes here, we'll get Mark going again. Somebody forgot to feed the hamster that powers the computer that Mark is using. So we'll get that going here in just a bit. We've got the Fournette farewell to talk about. We've got Unique Ngakoue and the trade there to talk about. We've got Minshew to talk about. Phil demands we talk about Minshew by the wear of the shirt. And so we've got all those things. Defense as well, of course. Marone and Caldwell, their job security, all these things we're going to talk about. And at the end of the show, we'll kind of go through the schedule and see what we think. But again, if you have a question, be sure to let us know in the chat, and we will be, and Josh will make sure to get us lined up to make sure that you are ready to go. If you have a question or comment you want to get in the chat throughout the course of this, we'll probably go for about, half hour, 45 minutes, depending on how things go, how everybody's feeling about it. No commercial breaks. Where's the round of applause?
Look who's back.
Woo!
And Mark is back. So we'll just power through this and do what we can. If you have a question and we go to you, make sure that you unmute yourself. You've probably been through the unmuting process quite a bit if you used Zoom or Teams or whatnot. So
Hey, Cole.
Yes, sir. Yes.
I had some technical difficulties for the last 5 minutes. Could you start over? Because I missed.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, from the beginning.
So when football was first created,
Mark forgot to pay his Wi-Fi bill to us here at the station. We're sorry about that.
I got a dial-in problem with my AOL account. Sorry, everyone.
All right. Well, should we get things started, Mark? What do you say?
Let's talk football. Crazy
Let's
week.
do it.
Wow.
Certainly a crazy week. And let's start it with the Leonard Fournette news, the most recent news. Yesterday, the Jaguars announced in the morning that they were waiving Fournette. Today, nobody claimed him on the waiver wire. Fournette is now going to put forth a grievance to try to get some of his money back. And you see the numbers from last year. He was certainly a more effective back last year than he was the previous year. And all offseason, the Jaguars have been trying to trade him. They didn't get any takers. Nobody who was willing to give anything of note at all, according to Doug Marrone. So, Mark, the move was a surprise, I think, to everybody, the timing of it. Now, where does this leave the Jaguars?
Well, it certainly was a surprise to me and all of us, really. And it's not just because that we released one of our best players. We released one of our best players at a time where we seem to be losing a lot of some very good young talent. I mean, think about this. From 2012 to 2017, we don't have any of those first-round picks anymore. We have the last 2 years, and that's it. For a team every team that is successful year in and year out, they have a foundation, and it's built on young players that you get in the draft. That is the model. That's the idea that so many organizations embrace. It just hasn't worked out. And here is another, first round pick, 2017. That's gone. It surprises me. There's a lot to go into, but we are without our best running back. And the Jaguars can say whatever they want. He has produced in the last few years. He's had some years have been better than others, but Leonard Fournette is no longer a Jaguar. I'm surprised by it. 2 weeks before our kickoff to the season, and our best running back's gone, Cole. It's actually beyond surprising. It was shocking to me, the timing of it.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting today, Mark Long, who is the Associated Press writer who covers the Jaguars and the Gators, Northeast Florida, didn't report this per se, but went on 1010XL radio and told them that what he was hearing was that there were players in the Jaguars locker room who were going to the coaches and saying, we've had enough of Fournette, we want him out. Number one, how unprecedented is that? And number two, what does that tell you about what's happening right now in that locker room?
Well, we've been talking about the culture for a few years now. Things that have gone on in the locker room, things that we're not privy to. But Cole, you've heard things. I've heard things. The dysfunction that has existed for some time now. And what does that dysfunction lead to? Well, it leads to players wanting to leave, and it leads to very unsuccessful football seasons. When you have 53 guys, in this case right now, I believe there's 80 on the roster, Cole. But when you have 53 guys, which is your typical in-season roster, listen, not everybody's going to get along. A lot of guys from different backgrounds and different beliefs, and you know what I'm trying to say. But you are a team. You recognize there are differences, and you're not best buddies, and sometimes you're not even friends with some guys that you have to work with. But you have to find a way to work through that. I can think in my career a number of instances where there was just a few guys that that nobody really liked. But that's part of being on a football team. You got to work through that. If that is the case, if what Mark Long is reporting, and if it's actually if that's true, what an indictment on Leonard Fournette for a group of players to go into the head coach or the GM and say, hey, listen, this guy has to go. Cole, I'll be honest with you, I find it really hard to believe that it was that bad. Leonard Fournette has had his issues before, suspensions. He said things that perhaps a lot of people have disagreed with. But if that's true, golly, what a shame. And I hope it's not. I hope it's more of a football thing. To me, Cole, I think it was a number of reasons why Leonard Fournette's not in here anymore. And perhaps that was one of them.
All right, so we do want to be interactive. We want folks to be able to chime in if they want. So let us know in the chat if you want to go. Josh will let you know that, or let me know who's coming up next with a question or a comment. The old raise your hand thing, too. If you can't operate the chat, we can do that.
I see you, Lauren.
I see Lauren's hand up.
I see you, Lauren.
Let's go to Lauren. Lauren, if you would unmute yourself and Fire away. We'll get things started here. And we have more topics we want to get into ourselves. We want to make sure that we allow for some interaction here.
All right. My question is, like, with the release or trade of so many of our key players and the release or trade of them, how do you think this will affect our fan base and our perception around the league that we're not tanking for Trevor?
Well, it's a big question mark that we've been talking about. By the way, I would think that this is going to, the fan reaction is going to be that there's only going to be about 25% of the capacity in the stadium this year, which of course there's going to be only 25%. This is the year, if you're going to tank, this is the year to do it from a financial standpoint, because you're going to get 17,000 fans in the stadium one way or another, right? Mark, if you're worried about the financial ramifications of it, and you think you're doing the thing to blow it up and rebuild and start putting the pieces in place with draft picks and young players and develop, so 2021, 22, and 23 are good years. And of all the years that we've ever seen, 2020 would be the right year to do that. And Dave Caldwell did say early last month, I guess August, that when he put that team together in 2017, he knew this year was going to be probably a leaner year because of the window of opportunity with a lot of those big dollar players.
Well, I think Dave Caldwell would have to agree that if he was expecting this to be a lean year, what was he expecting last year and the year before? There have been far too many lean years. And I think he used the word reset. Reset is a much nicer word than the word that's being thrown around all over the place, and that's tanking. Listen, one, I'm not saying that the team is tanking. Doug Marrone doesn't care about next year's draft. Doug Marrone doesn't care, nor does he want to talk about Trevor Lawrence, nor do the players. If you're in the National Football League, you're a professional football player, and with that title comes a responsibility to be a professional, to go out there and do your best to win, because that's the nature of this game, is to win football games. But it's tough to do when you've lost so many players. I don't blame any fan or anybody covering the Jaguars to think that perhaps there is some kind of tanking going on. But I'd like to think that that's not the perspective or from our head coach or the players. For a team to tank, there couldn't be anything more insulting to the fan base. There couldn't be anything more unprofessional to the players to even consider, having a lean year, tanking and trying to get this player down the road. I don't think it's happening. Clearly, there's a strategy that 99% of us would disagree with, because as fans, and I'm a fan too, we've endured so many bad years, except for one in 2017, that do we really want to have to face a year where there's hardly any star power anymore? And the fans don't deserve that. It shouldn't happen. Your goal should be to go out there and win football games. But when players are leaving left and right and don't even want to be here, Lauren, that's tough to swallow. It's an absolute mess is what it is.
And when you talk about tanking, let's define that for the moment. There's a lot of sort of nuance in how you might talk about, is this team tanking? If we talk about tanking, then, and if that's a organization-wide effort to lose games, to get the number one pick, to be better in the future, I don't think that's happening, because players can't afford to tank. They have to prove every week that they deserve to be in the National Football League. And there aren't enough guys on this team that have the sort of resume built up that would indicate that, that they would tank. Players don't tank. Coaches, the only time a coach can tank is if it's somebody like Bill Belichick, and he's so established, has already proven himself. This coaching staff is not that. So the coaches they don't want to tank. Because it affects not only their continued employment in Jacksonville, but their employability elsewhere beyond that. So then the question is, what about the GM and what about the owner? Well, the general manager if he's told by the owner he's going to be there and we're going to give you a longer runway, okay, you can see that maybe a general manager would make a long-term plan, again, knowing that there are fewer ramifications for having a bad season this year than any other. And obviously the owner, if he knows he's still going to make money, despite the fact that his team might not be very good this year, it gives you some flexibility to do those things if you believe that doing that will make you better and sustainable for the future. And we all know the number one thing in the National Football League you have to be a sustainable winner is the right quarterback. Ask New England, ask Kansas City now. They've got the best young quarterback in the game. They've already got an MVP and a Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes. That's the kind of guy you want for long-term success for sure. So is everybody tanking? No. I don't know about Dave Caldwell and Shad Khan, though, in terms of how they feel. Obviously, Shad Khan signed off on Dave Caldwell making these moves with the roster. The question is how much of that thought has been, to target intentionally to be a bad team. I don't think it's quite, if you remember the old baseball movie Major League, I don't think it's quite that. I don't think we need to call Pedro Serrano just yet for bats. But I do think that looking at what's going to happen here, you look at this team before they made some of these moves in the last couple of days, they weren't expected to be a contender. Well, now they're certainly not. So we'll see what happens there. Craig Shoup has put one in the chat. He's gone dark on the screen. So we'll just read his question here from the chat. We can do that as well if you're not comfortable or available to say your question on mic. Do you believe they really could not find any draft picks, even a 7th round pick for Leonard Fournette?
I'm surprised they couldn't find a 7th round pick. I'm absolutely surprised they couldn't get anything for Leonard Fournette. I mentioned the production that he had last year, not only running the football, but out of the backfield for Gardner Minshew. Caught a lot of passes, was very productive. Goodness sakes. I mean, if you just look at this, he's the 4th leading rusher, I believe, right now in Jaguar history in just a few years. And that surprises, that really does surprise me that they couldn't find anything for him. But he cleared waivers. No one was really interested. There's the business side of that, of course. But here's my point. I think he still has value. He's still a young player. His best football could be in front of him. I don't think that he has such a bad reputation, throughout the National Football League and among, different organizations that nobody would want to, be a part of him. He's had his hiccups, but I don't think you can say that Leonard Fournette is a bad guy or a bad teammate or, a problem in the locker room. I don't think he's gotten to that point. So I'm surprised if it is true. I find it hard to believe that they couldn't get something for Leonard Fournette.
I was surprised about that too. However, given where they are, where everybody is right now in terms of getting ready for camp, to bring in a guy who would have to learn a new system, and the other thing that if Leonard Fournette had been a 6th round pick, and he had been a moderate success player, could you have gotten a 7th round pick for him? Maybe that's easier because the expectation is, well, the Jaguars are just giving up on him, but maybe they're just making a mistake. When you give up on a 1st round pick, a guy who you already tried to trade back around the draft, teams, especially this year, where it's more difficult to scout another player and to be able to learn more about what's going on because of the lack of having an off-season program, OTAs, no mini camps. I think teams probably going, oh, do we want to pull a trigger on this right now? And what?
Right.
We got to check him out. We got to figure out what's going on here.
Right.
So I think somebody will pick him up off waivers, and now that he's cleared waivers, rather. But now, you're not going to have to pay him what the Jaguars are going to pay him, $4 million, whatever it was going to be. And I think it's going to be interesting to see where he might land if you just talk about the kind of back that he is and where he might fit. There are quite a few places you could think of. I also thought it was interesting today that one of the new rumors around the NFL is that Alvin Kamara would be available, that the Saints are potentially shopping him in a trade, which astounds me. What? Something must have happened for a guy.
Now he would fit with us, right?
Perfect. Catches the ball great out of the backfield.
Right.
And so Doug Marrone talked about the fit with Fournette not being right. Now, there was some warning flags going up on those comments, right? But if because he has shown an ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. But Alvin Kamara would be perfect for a West Coast offense, right? So, Mark, we may have to have you do some digging with your old buddy Drew Brees to find out what's going on in New Orleans.
I'll let you know. I have a question, though. The timing of the release was interesting, which leads me to believe that was more than just a football decision. Going into training camp, you at least, Doug Marrone knew who Leonard Fournette is, right? His style of play, his strengths and his weaknesses. My question is, why 2 weeks before the first game, they release him? Don't you have an idea? I mean, at least if you're going to release him, do it before training camp. Allow the guys that you do think fit into this offense to get those reps. He got the majority of the reps. I heard that he looked really good in practice, that this is a contract year. So all the things were kind of lining up for Leonard Fournette. So, and I don't quite understand the fit thing. Doug Marrone says he doesn't quite fit. Well, what does that mean? I mean, I have an idea. I think I know what it means, but here's a perfect example. In 1996, let me go back. This was long before Sarah was born. In 1996, okay, we had two running backs on the roster. It was Natron Means and James Stewart. Okay, downhill, physical, between the tackle guy. Then we had some knucklehead quarterback that couldn't stay in the pocket, that was running all over the place. Okay, absolute idiot. All right, so I just think that smart offensive coordinators, you see what you got and you fit the system around them. Okay. Not the other way around. You take the system and, okay, guys, this is what we're going to do. This is going to have to be, this is going to be how we go forward. I'm Jay Gruden. This is my system. You're going to have to work. I don't think it works like that, Cole. You look around, you see a running back that's has produced, that looks good, that's hungry and motivated. You got a quarterback. I mean, goodness sakes, Jay Gruden, you've been around long enough. Can't you figure out how to use both of their strengths to make this work?
It's interesting because there are some players who have worked in this system who the Jaguars brought in this offseason. Chris Thompson, who came from Washington, where Jay Gruden had been previously. And before that, he was in Cincinnati, where Tyler Eifert worked in this system as a tight end. There was a lot of talk during camp about how important and valuable those guys had been to teach the offense to the other players, to sort of help them, oh, no, this is what we're looking for here. And I asked Eifert about how much that had changed how much the offense had changed since it was run in Cincinnati. He said it's almost exactly the same as it was in Cincinnati. So you're talking about over the course of several years, not a lot of adaptation. And to your point, I've always thought that in college football, coaches create a system and then they can recruit to that system.
Yes.
They can make adjustments if they get a special player or whatnot. But you know the kind of players you're going after, whether you're running the wishbone or you're running the run and shoot or the spread or what have you. You go out. You can go out and find those. At the NFL level, you have to be able to adapt. And one of the great lessons I recall about was when the Bills got Doug Flutie years ago. And you'll remember, because he was talking about a guy who couldn't stay in the pocket, right? Found a way to utilize him. More recently, what Greg Roman has done with the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson. Enormous difference. League MVP.
Adapt. Yep.
Adapt to what you have. Put your players in the best opportunity to move forward and make a big play. So it's a big question for sure. And I don't think this Leonard Fournette story is over at all. Let's shift for a moment and talk about, Penny's got a question.
All right.
Penny's on a walk. So I love that. She's out there. So Penny, unmute yourself. And
Penny's putting in work tonight, I'll tell you all.
Yeah.
We're all lazy sitting inside.
I know it. Penny, so go ahead and unmute yourself. And we'll get your question in here. There we go.
Unmute. Okay, I'm unmuted.
We got you.
my question is to both of you. Do you think this is another move by the powers to be to move this team to London?
Oh, she dropped the London
right there.
question. Wow.
Well,
Start, you want me to, Mark?
Huh?
we love this team, but I'm tired of this nonsense.
I love Benny.
Here's what I would say on that, Mark, and you can chime in.
Yeah.
If you were trying to do things to run off the fan base, you probably would wait till it wasn't a pandemic to do it. I do think the timing of this, because of what's happened, they knew that this was going to be a leaner year after they made a lot of those big free agent signings in 2017 to bring in guys like Calais Campbell and guys who made a big impact on what would happen. I don't think that's the plan. But if you ask me, will the Jaguars ever be in London? I can't give you a definitive absolutely not. I just don't think this is, Shad Khan doesn't have to run the fan base off in order to move his team. I hate to say it, but the fan base in Jacksonville is dwarfed by the size of the potential fan base in London. So even if everybody in Jacksonville wanted to go to the game every week, you can't compete with the size of London from that standpoint. Now, there are a lot of reasons, and we could get into a long conversation here about why I think having one NFL team in London is not a good idea, and I don't think the Players Association wouldn't go along with it too well. But I don't think that's what this is. I know there's a lot of folks who are sort of once bitten, twice shy on this topic, Mark. But I don't see that as being, hand in hand I think what they're trying to do is they're operating as a small market team. And if they can find a way in a year where they're not going to make much revenue to spend a lot less money and be able to reap some benefits down the line, which remains to be seen, I think that's what this is. And if that's a tank, then I think if we want to call it that, then yeah, they're tanking. But I don't think it's about trying to move it.
Yeah, and in the process of that strategy that you just mentioned, Cole, going 3-13, 4-12 at the best, 4-12 at best. Boy, that's hard to swallow. Here are my thoughts on London. I think there will always be a Jaguar presence in London as long as Shad Khan is the owner. They were going to 2 games this year. Obviously, the pandemic changed everything. I think if Mr. Khan could, he would have as many games as possible over in London. Listen, he's a businessman. It's no secret. He makes a lot more money with home games over in London. Having said that, and I do think that we'll always have a presence in London, but I also think we will always have a presence in Jacksonville. I really do believe that. Perhaps it's wishful thinking. I think, as far as the logistics and the taxes and the NFLPA, our union, allowing a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars to have permanent residence in London, I don't think that will ever happen. But I think we're always going to be there. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. I don't expect a permanent move. I hope not. But I think for Mr. Khan, the more games, the better, because you take the value of this franchise and listen, it doubles, it triples the more you get an opportunity to go over and play games in London. And I don't know the exact numbers, of course, but it's huge revenue for the owner if there are a lot of games there.
And the game day revenue alone is about double in London as it is here. Forget about all the secondary revenue streams if you build up a big fan base and have other things going on. All right, Phil has a question. Phil, do you want to ask it, or do you just want us to go off the chat here?
Yeah. So, what do you guys think of the 2020 draft class? Like, do you think any of these players, do you think everyone's going to make the roster? Do you think some of these guys are going to have an immediate impact?
Phil, let me answer, Cole. You're going to hate my answer, Phil. But anytime I get asked about the draft, the current draft, this is what I always say. I will tell you 2 or 3 years from now. It's a terrible answer. Listen, my hope is the early draft picks make an immediate impact. I think CJ needs to get on that field and produce. That's what first rounders are supposed to do. They're supposed to start. They're supposed to make an impact. They don't have to make the Pro Bowl. But it's always hard to say. And I'm speaking about that based on experience. So many young draft picks I've been around that were supposed to be Hall of Famers, all pros, all this, turn out to be absolutely nothing. And then you get a fifth or sixth round guy that is with your organization for 9 years or whatever. It's not an exact science. I wish I had more confidence in the Jaguars' ability to draft. But my hope is the guy you're seeing right there becomes a very good corner, and this year really has a good year. Laviska would be great to see him produce. I think he's doing very well too. After that, really, Phil, for me, it's hard to say.
You talked about Laviska Shenault. We saw Colin Johnson there a little bit earlier, another draft pick as a wide receiver. Both have had their moments in camp. I would also say that over the course of time, I have found that rookie wide receivers in general who haven't proven it before, but if you could be a star in camp, but when you start having to be concerned about somebody popping you, it can change things in a hurry. We can start going through the list of all-time Jaguars, camp wide receivers who were great, who never quite translated it to the field. And not having any preseason games, we haven't been able to judge those guys in a live fire situation. We don't know how, again, Shenault looks like a physical guy who'd be a very good run after the catch guy. Johnson, big and tall, guy who's been able to go up for it in practice. And but it's so tough to judge these guys. And remember, these are rookies who didn't have rookie minicamp, didn't have OTAs, didn't have minicamp, had a longer ramp-up period in the preseason, which Doug Marrone says has helped them, but they haven't been able to be put to the test in preseason games. So, Mark, something you and I have been talking about all offseason basically is that the kind of teams that are likely to have the most success this year are teams that have veteran players at key positions, veteran quarterback, returning coaching staff intact, guys who have been there before. It's not the team with new offensive coordinator and 5 or 6 rookies maybe starting for this team. That's not the kind of team that I think is going to have success this year in particular. It's rarely a recipe for success, but this year in particular in the NFL. We also did show a picture there of K'Lavon Chaisson, and he's the guy who's going to get a lot of the reps that Yannick Ngakoue might have gotten had he stayed with the team, Mark. And again, you got to see it when he's going full speed. He looks like he's got the physical tools to be a good pass rusher. As you see Josh Allen, they're kind of looking over his shoulder. Josh Allen, who had great physical tools, again, was projected as a top 4 pick in the draft. Jaguars get him at 7, and then he had Calais Campbell and Ngakoue there to feed off of it, especially with Calais. He really learned an awful lot. Well, now here comes Chaisson, and who is he looking to? Well, he's looking to a guy who's just in the second year in the league. Josh Allen had a terrific rookie year. He's got a very professional approach. I love his maturity to come in and the way he's approached things. But he doesn't have the depth of knowledge that he will in 4 or 5 or 6 years playing in the National Football League. So we'll see. Again, I'm guarded. I think they have picked some guys who can be very good players in the NFL and can be good players in 21, 2, 3, and 4. I think making an expectation that these guys are going to be difference makers this year, I think it's a stretch, quite honestly.
I think these young draft picks, CJ, the guys that we've discussed, Laviska, they'll have moments, right? They're going to have some good moments. They're going to show some potential, a big play, maybe to seal a victory, an interception or a sack, a fumble return for a touchdown. Those things are going to happen for those players. And they're going to be able to show us something. I'm confident that's pretty common. But to really come in and make an impact to the point where you're carrying the team, or perhaps that's not fair. You're established, That doesn't happen a lot. Those guys are rare. Josh Allen, he's got a long way to go. He's doing everything right, saying everything right, hard worker, very productive last year. But if I'm a rookie, how much am I looking to a second-year player for guidance and leadership? Josh is still trying to figure it out. And to your point, Cole, in a couple years, 3 years, he'll be the guy. He'll be that Calais Campbell to a lot of young guys. And I'm not saying don't learn from Josh Allen. Don't lean on things that he says, because he did have a productive year. The team is just void of established leaders. There's guys that can talk, but then there are guys who can really lead. And there are some, but it's just not the ideal situation. It's a team that looks like it's going to struggle this year. We will have our moments, but you're right, Cole, that the teams with a veteran quarterback, a veteran coaching staff, teams that have been together, older teams that have had success recently, that have been together, and they have a core group of guys that can handle a pandemic. They can handle not having a training camp or an off season or OTAs and no preseason games. Piece of cake. We've been together. We've won a lot of games. Here we go. Those are the teams that are going to be the teams at the top this year.
Hey, Mark, I'll jump in here real quick because I see Melanie and Marcia have a couple of questions that are kind of similar in what you're talking about. Melanie wanted to know, does the team ever have any training for the players on team unity? And Marcia wanted to know if they get talked to about, at the same time, how to relate to fans.
So the only thing I do know about, at least I think I've been done 10 years, and in about the last maybe 7 or 8 years of my career, we started doing media training, how to talk to the media, just some tools of the trade, eye contact, speak up, what to say, what not to say, those kind of things. I'm still working on those, by the way. As far as working with the fans, I think, the best way for a player to communicate to the fans would be through the media. So indirectly, that is the case. You anytime there's a camera on you or you're talking to a reporter, you do want to be a professional and be a good guy and all of that. But that's really the only training specifically that I think even comes close to communicating with fans. I hope that answered your question.
I will also say, Mark, in our dealings with players, you have different sort of environments in which you interact with a player. Right after a game, at a post-game interview, emotions are very high, frustrations or jubilation. You get it's a more raw kind of interaction. You see that, on comments after the game. On a Monday where we might have the Mark Brunell show and we have a player come in, whether it's Miles Jack or whether it's somebody else who comes in with or Miles or what have you, we try to set the tone in that show of being kind of safe zone is probably too much of it, but this isn't an attack situation. You have them out there. You want them to be comfortable and be able to answer honestly and not feel like they're on the defensive. And then during the week in the locker room, there may be some more pointed questions when you have, and you've experienced this, Mark, in your days, 7 or 8 or 10 reporters around you, all peppering you with questions from one angle or another.
And you were the toughest, by the way. And you were the most difficult.
Not by a long shot. Not by a long shot. I will also say that you were always very good as a player of being able to answer a question, even if you didn't want to, like, let's say somebody knew something was trying to get you to say, yes, this teammate is a bad teammate. You weren't going to do that. You could answer the question by saying enough where it was a usable soundbite, even if it didn't really say that much. That's a skill that players can sometimes learn as you go on. So, we'll see how it all plays out. I understand that Sarah has a question, and I've just been told by Josh she is an advanced Zoom user. So she really raised her virtual hand.
What does that mean?
I don't know. It's way beyond my comprehension.
I don't know if it's on your screen, but on my screen, I can see there's a little hand in a box up in the
I don't
corner
have
for
that.
Sarah. So
Okay.
I can't even figure out how to do that right now. So Sarah, please.
Sarah, if you're looking for a job, we have a place for you over here at the station.
Apparently my job, apparently. So,
So Sarah, if you would unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
Hi. You kind of already answered it. I was just everybody kind of knew Jan eventually it was going to end somehow. But now that we know how it ended, I was wondering, like, especially with all the recent departures on the defensive line, how y'all thought that they would kind of replace the role that Jan had, not necessarily like, one player, but just how you thought they would address that, because that kind of leaves a big hole. And we just don't have that kind of depth on the defensive line right now. So just kind of wondering what y'all's thoughts were on that.
Yeah, there's been talk, and it's interesting to hear from both Doug Marrone and from Todd Wash, the defensive coordinator, about how much 3-4 principle they would use. And I think a lot of this has had to be talked about adapting to what you have. They've had, you mentioned, Sarah, the losses on the defensive line, some of them through a trade or through COVID opt-outs in the case of some. They are thin on that line right now. They need Taven Bryan to step up big time and basically replace Calais Campbell's position. I don't think anybody expects Taven Bryan to play at Calais Campbell's level this year, but he's got to be the guy who takes a big chunk of that. I think you're going to need to see a lot out of Avery Jones this year as the oldest tenured player on that defensive line. But in terms of the pass rush, I think it's going to have to come from Allen, and it's going to have to come from Chason. They also brought in Cassius Marsh, who some of you longtime Jaguars fans will remember his dad, Curtis Marsh, who played on the team back in the early days. And he is sort of a hybrid edge rusher and a guy who's played linebacker and defensive end, depending on the situation and the scheme he's been in. We'll see if he can contribute some as well. Mark, the days of Saxonville are probably over. They don't have the horses right now to be able to do what they want to do on that defensive front. And when you add into the COVID opt-outs, that takes even more out of the opportunity to rush the passer.
Yes, Sarah, I'll answer your question with this. How do you replace Jan? You really don't. You don't. It's unfortunate, and you're exactly right. We saw this coming for a long time, and it is unfortunate. Good guy, hard worker. His job was important to him. A professional. Had said some things early on that he simply just did not want to be a part of this organization. I disagreed with that. Again, it's just unfortunate he's gone, but he's gone. How do you replace him? You really don't. To Cole's point, defensive line is going to in all likelihood struggle, as will, a lot of different position groups on this football team. I think the strength, veering off a little bit, the strength of this team, I think, will be our receiver core. And maybe our offensive line will come together, but by and large, this is a team that's hurting in a lot of places, and it really is unfortunate because every year at this time, regardless of what the expectations are, there's always an excitement and anticipation of a new football season. Even in a pandemic, you're still looking forward to the season and wondering what is this team going to look like. I go through that every year. I get excited about the Jaguars. And I still feel that, but when I look around, boy, it's really tough. Anything can happen. I do believe that, but I would just hate for the fans and even the players and the organization. Listen, I was with Doug Marrone in New Orleans. I like Doug Marrone. He was the offensive coordinator when I was with the Saints. I think he's a really good coach. I hate for him to have to be in a situation where in all likelihood they're going to lose some games. So we'll see. It's a one game at a time, and we're counting on a lot from Gardner Minshew. We haven't really talked about him. I have a lot of thoughts on him, but we'll see. It's right around the corner, Cole.
Let's talk about Gardner Minshew. Before we do, I want to make sure that Josh pointed out not to leave out DeJuan Smoot in the conversation. He's another guy as a pass rusher who's going to have to take a step forward.
Yep.
He's going to have to be better. Part of it's been lack of playing time, but why lack of playing time? Lack of productivity. So he's going to have to take that step forward. Let's talk about Minshew, though, and your expectations, Mark, for what Gardner can do here in the second year. He's come into the season as the starter. It's the first time since high school that Minshew has come into a year, knowing he's the starter, which is remarkable. What do you expect to see out of Minshew here in year 2?
Well, one of the things that we said repeatedly on the show last year, and one of the things that I really believe is important for a young quarterback to have, and that is a prolific run game. Well, yesterday morning we got rid of our best running back. Say what you want about fit and West Coast system and Jay Gruden, all of that. He was our best running back. Certainly the most productive, and I just absolutely disagree with the move. For a young quarterback that's still trying to figure it out. Now, a couple things he's not trying to figure out. He's not trying to figure out confidence and the it factor and that moxie, whatever. He's got that. He's figured that out, and I love it about him. But he's still a young quarterback that's inexperienced. He's still learning. He's still going to make mistakes. It's unfortunate that he did not have an offseason to really grow as a quarterback in the NFL, as a passer, and going through his progressions, all that stuff. So I don't know which way it's going to go for this young quarterback. You're going to see a lot of effort. You're going to see a lot of try hard. You're going to see him make a lot of plays, but I think you're also going to see him make mistakes, particularly early. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, for a young quarterback to make mistakes. That's what this offseason was for, Cole. OTAs and training camp and preseason games, that's where you make your mistakes, and there's nothing wrong with them because you learn from them, and that's where you develop. Well, my hope is that he doesn't make those mistakes in the first, 4 games of the season, because then you're 1-3 and 0-4, and then it's a wrap, and then it's over. I don't want him to struggle early. I don't want him to struggle at all. I want him to have some early success. But here's my point. I think it's a long shot, guys. I think it's a long shot. He does have a good receiving core. I'd be surprised if his running game was solid. A lot of good things being said about the offensive line. I've heard that year in and year out, so we'll see. But it really falls on his shoulders, and that's a lot of pressure to have on a quarterback, but on a young quarterback. So we'll see. I'm rooting for the kid. I love the kid. Been around him a little bit. He's been on the show a couple times, and you just can't help but root for Gardner Minshew. I hope he surprises me. I hope I'm wrong about the early mistakes. If anyone's going to surprise me and make me wrong, it's probably going to be Gardner Minshew. So again, as I've said about 10 times, we'll see. We'll see how this plays out.
All right. Any other questions here before we give our season predictions? Lauren's got one more. Go ahead and unmute yourself there.
Not as good as Sarah.
Not an advanced user, yeah.
Back, it was about Minshew also. This is his second year in the league, and he's playing under his second offensive coordinator. How's that going to affect his development? You think that's going to hurt him, or?
By the way, Lauren,
without the preseason,
it's like his fifth straight. It's like his fifth offense in the last 4 years he's played.
Correct, from college.
Go back to college. Amazing. Yeah,
Lauren, it's a great point. If you look at the greatest, let's the last 20 years. Let's look at the greatest quarterbacks that have played in the last 2 decades. Peyton Manning, Brett Favre, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. I could rattle off more, but for the sake of time, the common theme with all of those guys is that they stayed in one system for that whole time. Now, they were good enough when they moved teams. Guess what? The system came with them. But there's something so true about continuity in a system. One of the reasons that I was able to stick around Jacksonville for as long as I did, for 9 years, was that I had the same system, Tom Coughlin's system, for 8 of those years, and had to learn a new system the next year under Jack Del Rio. Boom, I was gone. Had something to do with Byron Leftwich too, of course, but 2 offensive coordinators in 2 years is problematic. It's difficult. Gardner's a smart guy, but a lot of smart guys have struggled having to adjust year to year on a brand new system. And you might say, well, everybody runs the same stuff. Yes, but not everything is called the same. The terminology is entirely different. The approach, the play calling, the philosophy behind all of those same plays is many times very different. So that's a great point that I haven't thought of in some time. Having a new system will hurt him, and to a degree will set him back, because this new system, he didn't get an off season. So Lauren, that's a great point.
All right, let's give Marcia the last question before we give our season predictions here. Marcia, bring us home strong.
Yeah, well, this past weekend, they've been playing older games, and this past weekend it was the Denver game where, of course, the Jaguars won, and we had a huge celebration. One thing I noticed was all the signs in the stands. There were so many signs, and I kind of missed that. And I wonder, Mark, did you ever notice signs in the stands, or is it something that you miss about the old days and fans?
There are things about my playing days that I do miss. And two at the top of the list. Number one is, without a doubt, the camaraderie. It's the locker room. It's the guys. It's the road trips. It's being on the bus, being on the plane, messing around in the locker room before, after practice, you name it, just with the guys. Being in our stadium, doing well, winning, our fans going crazy, a big play, a big moment, our stadium just going absolutely nuts, seeing those signs. You can replicate the camaraderie to a degree, but you can never replicate the feeling of being on the field and your fans just going crazy because maybe it's a big pass or it was a sack or something like that. Marcia, it's the greatest, and I absolutely miss that. And so when games are on TV or I see a highlight or something, I'm brought back to those moments because I can remember those big wins. Unfortunately, I can remember those tough losses too, and so I remember those feelings as well. But I cherish the relationships that I've had and built in those locker rooms, the friendships that to this day I still have. Just being around the guys, playing a kid's game when you're 28 years old. Are you kidding me? And then someone actually giving you money to do it. It was a dream come true. I love Jacksonville. I love our fans. I love the memories. I wish what my biggest regret in life is that we didn't win a Super Bowl here because it was something that we could have all shared. And but it was a great run, and I missed the signs. Some of them were great, but it was a special time. It was absolutely a special time. Marcia, I'm about to get teary-eyed here a little bit. I wish you didn't ask that question.
Notice he did not say he missed me asking him questions in the locker room.
No, you were great, actually, Cole. I can pick a few others out that I didn't like.
Well, let's finish things up here with season predictions. This could, of course, change if there are more moves that happen between now and the opener on September 13th. So, Mark, what are you feeling about this season?
I think the final record's going to be 4-12. That's what I think. I think the first quarter of the season is critical. If we're 0-4 or 1-3, I'm going to be right. It's going to probably be a 4-12 season. Now, there could be a couple games when Gardner Minshew just is Gardner Minshew, and last minute, I could see that kid doing that and maybe getting us to 5 or 6 wins. I think it's 4-12. Again, I hope I'm wrong, but that's just kind of until a week ago. And a week ago, I was 6-10.
Yeah, and I think 6-10 might be the worst possible season for the Jaguars from this standpoint. There's no chance you get the first pick of the draft at 6-10 or 5-11.
Yeah,
but it's a miserable year because you're going to lose all those games. It's a miserable year if you're losing. If you're going to lose, again, this goes back to the tanking conversation. If they wind up 2-12, 3-13, We have a much better chance of getting that number 1 pick. Doesn't mean it always works out. The Colts drafted Andrew Luck. They were a very good team, never got to a Super Bowl. So there's no guarantees, and certainly quarterback is not the number 1 issue on this team, but you can't be a contender year after year unless you have your guy at that position. I'm thinking more of the 3-13 line, Mark. Call me, Mr. Doom and Gloom, but I'm as much about what's happening in the trenches as anything. Terrible losses, as Sarah alluded to, on that defensive front. That was an issue last year. They brought in guys like Al Woods and Rodney Gunter that I thought would help there. They're not going to be playing, so their help for stopping the run is going to be an issue. I don't think they're going to be after the quarterback as well as they did in past years. You've got a rookie cornerback who is very talented. We'll see what happens there. And then on the other side with Trey Herndon or whomever else winds up with that position, I think they're going to give up some points. And if that offensive line doesn't play better than they did last year, particularly on third down and in the red zone, they're not going to score enough points to be able to keep up. So I think it could be a long season. But I've been wrong before. We'll see how it all plays out. Marcia doesn't believe I've been wrong before.
I've got an idea. Okay, so with a show of hands or fingers, I should say, everyone on here, how many wins do you think the Jaguars will get? So Phil, Lauren, Sarah.
If it's 1 win, you just use this finger, okay? Word of caution.
This is a family show. Greg says 2. Sarah,
we are on the internet.
Gavin, what do you got, Gavin?
Marcia's 3.5. Gavin's 4.
Phil, 6.
Phil.
Okay.
Melanie is going 4.
Phil's got the shirt on. We should not be surprised.
Marcia. 2. Yeah.
Hey, I
think we're all in the same ballpark, though.
Who's that just flipped me off with the 1? Oh, that was Cole. Cole just.
I'm sorry about that. That was half a peace sign, Mark.
I didn't see Melanie's. What did Melanie do here?
Melanie was.
Melanie said 4.
Knock it up, Melanie.
Yep.
4. Okay. All right.
So yeah, I think we're all about in the same spot there. Well,
okay, Phil.
I want to thank everybody except for Phil. I want to thank everybody for chiming on here, even Phil, for being a part of things. We had a great time doing this. We'll be doing another one next week. Feel free to spread the word. We can have more folks involved here as well next week, and we'll be doing it at the same time, 7:30 on Tuesday. The following opportunity, the week after the season opener, we'll have Mark Brunell show that'll be on CW17. But for next week, it'll be just virtual like we're having here. So thank you so much to everybody for joining us here on this virtual and Zoom edition of the Mark Brunell Show for News4Jax Insiders, and for those who are watching on News4Jax.com. Thanks so much, Mark.
Cole.
Great job. I'll see you in 4 seconds when you walk across the other studio.
I'm right next door.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good stuff.